The fire alarm go, it will be for real. But please note the instructions behind me. Can I ask you all to switch your phones to silent or to off? And we are being recorded, so please use the microphones. This is a meeting held in public. It's not a public meeting, therefore I'd ask you, members in the public gallery, to refrain from cheering, shouting, or showing any other form of your thoughts on the matter. Let's move on to the main item of the business. Item number 1, the minutes of the meeting which took place on the 5th of August 2015 have been on the table for the last 30 minutes. Are you content I sign them as a true record? Thank you very much. Emma, apologies for absence.
We have apologies from Councillors Brian Adams, Jed Hall, Carol King and Libby Piper. Thank you. Number for the meeting.
Councillor Edwards.
I'm a member of Hazelmead Town Council planning meeting.
Thank you very much.
I'm the same.
Thank you very much. Question from members of the public, Emma.
None received, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any relevant updates, Elizabeth?
There are none in relation to the item on this agenda. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed. Application for planning permission. Well, we have had a site visit, so there's only one item on the agenda. We'll move on. Just make a plea, if I may. If people feel that a site visit is necessary, can we actually arrange it before the planning meeting so that we don't have deferrals time and time again? It just helps the flow. If people feel a site visit is advantageous, to talk to the committee secretaries and say, what about it? A quick email to everyone will elicit the right information. I think it would speed up the planning process. Sorry to be a bit of a bore on that one. Tonight's planning application, A1, WA 2015-1020, land between Shortfield House and Tingle's Cottage, Hamlash Lane, Frensham. Louise would like to introduce, please.
Thank you, Chairman. The site is located on the western side of Hamlash Lane. It originally formed part of the residential curtilage of Shortfield House, but has since been divided from the site and is currently unoccupied. The site is located just outside the village settlement of Shortfield. The boundary of the village settlement runs opposite the site along the other side of the road. The site is surrounded by residential properties which are predominantly detached and semi-detached residential dwellings. As you can see from the aerial photo, the site is covered by dense landscaping. The closest residential properties are Tignall's Cottage, which is located here to the north, Shortfield House, which is located here with the residential curtilage to the south, and Shortfield Cottage to the rear. These top two photos are of the adjoining property at Tignall's Cottage. This property has been extended to the side. There are windows in the side elevation of this property, and these rooms are also served by windows to the front and the rear. This photo is taken from Hamlash Lane, looking towards the front of the site. This photo is taken from within the curtilage of Shortfield House, looking into the site. And these two photos show some of the properties opposite the site on Hamlash Lane. Two detached dwellings are proposed as part of this application. Each of the properties would have an access off Hamlash Lane and would be provided with free off-street car parking spaces and hard standing for manoeuvring at the front. Areas of amenity space would be provided to the rear of each property. Landscaping would be lost to facilitate the proposal, but all trees of significance within and around the site would be protected and retained. Surrey County Council have assessed the proposed accesses and the proposed visibility displays. These are considered to be acceptable in terms of highway safety. The loss of some landscaping to the front would open up the site to provide these accesses, but given the residential context of the surrounding area, this is considered acceptable. The adjoining property here at Tignall's Cottage has been previously extended to the side, and there is a garage also along the side boundary. These extensions are not shown on this block plan. But this proposed building here would be located 4.5 metres from the side of Tignall's Cottage. Plot 1 would be a 2-storey detached property comprising 4 bedrooms, as would Plot 2. This plan shows the street scene along Hamlash Lane, with the 2 proposed detached properties here in the centre of the drawing, Tignall's Cottage here to the right, and the access to Shortfield House here to the left. In conclusion, whilst the proposal is outside the village settlement boundary, it is surrounded by residential properties and is close to village facilities. It is therefore considered to be an appropriate location for housing. It would have an acceptable design and appearance and would have an acceptable impact on the surrounding neighbours. Furthermore, the proposed accesses are considered to be acceptable in terms of highway safety. The matters of technical opinion are the principle of the development, the housing land supply, trees, highway issues, biodiversity, and the impact on the SPA and SAC. The matters of judgment are the sustainability of the location, the impact on the AGLV and the countryside, the impact on residential amenity, and the standard of accommodation and amenity space. If I can finally draw members' attention to the update sheet, this corrects an inaccuracy on page 22 of the agenda and outlines that the proposed dwellings have heights of 8.45 and 8.9 metres. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Liz. This item was considered for public speaking. Members heard from the objector last time when all comments and concerns were noted, and they have been expressed both online and in the papers that you have in front of you. Neither speaker is here today to put their views forward, so members, it's time for you to make your comments. I should say thank you for joining me on the site visit the other day. Glad it wasn't raining at the time. Councillor Edwards.
Good evening, Chairman. Thank you. Can I have a look at the front elevations, please? And now it looks like we've got some sort of stone sort of cladding or something there. Is that right?
Yeah, the building. Thank you, Chairman. The building is proposed to be faced with stonework here, and then facing brick and tiles.
And is that only on one or on both? It's on both, is it?
That's correct.
Oh, well, that's a redeeming feature, I should think. Initially, I must admit that I was a bit concerned about this development, particularly on the street scene. And having visited the site, it was very enlightening because there are houses opposite. Can we go back to some of the photographs of the street scene? There are 2 particular there. On the opposite the current site, there are 2 fairly 80s or 90s detached houses built, and I think these are far a much better design than those particular houses, and that I feel sets a precedent here. And I was disappointed to see those houses because I thought that, you know, being such a beautiful location, the houses would be of a superior design, and that is not the case. There is also a newer house further down the road from that, a detached house, which is half tile hung, but again it's very plain in its appearance and doesn't add anything to the quality of housing on that particular road. It's a beautiful site. I certainly would love to live there. There will be an impact on amenity of Tignall's cottages, without a doubt. Can I ask, will the hedge be retained between the two, between the new development and Tignall's cottage?
Louise?
Thank you. There are two conditions proposed as part, if you choose to approve this application. One is regarding boundary treatment, and the second is regarding landscaping. If this application is approved, we would seek to retain landscaping along that boundary.
Can I just add one other thing on there?
Please do.
Can I see on the north side of the top developed house there? Is there any windows overlooking Tignall's cottage there, please? That would be the chimney side, wouldn't it? There isn't any. It's just the French windows.
So this is first floor level, and there are no windows proposed. There is only at ground floor level here, which is the position which is set back just there.
Yeah. Okay. Fine. That's fine. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Inchbaum.
Thank you, Chairman. I really don't like this application at all. I think that houses of this size should be set in much larger plots. They really have crowded them in. Yet again, it's getting a quart into a pint pot. And as they are on a hill sloping down to the road, the cottages on the other side of the road will be well and truly overlooked. But I'm not at all sure that what I have just said is sufficient reason for voting against it. I'm really rather hoping that one of my colleagues will come up with a good material reason why we should vote against it. But I really don't like it. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. I'd just make one comment. Looking at the location plan that we have, a fair number of the houses around are on similar or smaller plots, I think you'll see. Councillor Cowan.
Yes, thank you. Before Councillor Inchbald spoke, I was just going to say I'm not as easily pleased as Councillor Edwards, I'm afraid, on this one. I'm just disappointed. I was disappointed at the last meeting, and although I wasn't expecting them to shrink, I still am very worried about just the sheer scale of this. And I have no problem with the principle of development. I know Hamlash Lane well. And there are some unfortunate things on the other side of the road, but I don't see that that's any excuse to put something unfortunate on this side. You know, I just feel a bit like Councillor Inchbald, they're just too big. There's a gesture towards the stonework, which is nice. I think it could be a lot more generous a gesture. But I think to go, you know, to 8.5 and 8.9 when you've got surrounding properties with lower roof lines, and also, as you say, the topography of the area, like Councillor Inchbald, I am worried that, you know, perhaps that isn't a strong enough reason to turn something down, especially in this current climate. But I honestly don't think this is attractive enough really for this site, and I just think the scale and the harshness, because I actually find the designs harsh. I think they could be softened more, inappropriate for this particular area.
Councillor Edwards, please come back.
Just to come back on that, I do feel that Councillor Covers makes a very good point there, and I'm sure the developer could quite easily soften the image there at very little extra cost. And like previous developers coming to the council with proposals, they have gone back and softened the image quite substantially, as I say, at very little extra cost. And perhaps he could look at that and try and soften the image a bit and make it more suited to the location. But I can't, for the life of me, I can't see any reason, because precedents have already been set, for refusing this application. I just can't see it. Sorry. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Round.
I find myself agreeing with most of the comments, which is a bit difficult because they're not all in the same direction. But I do see Councillor Edwards' point. I can't see a reason for saying no. They're not very pretty. One could have built one larger house there, but whether that would have been better or not for the developer, I wouldn't know. So reluctantly, I think I would say yes.
There were, of course, on one of the plans that was subsequently withdrawn, the erection of 3 dwellings, and that was withdrawn earlier this year, just as a matter of interest. Do the officers wish to come in at this stage? Louise? Elizabeth? Elizabeth Sims.
Thank you, Chairman. I only to add that if members' judgment is fine and comes down to that they would prefer a different elevational treatment and materials, given that is largely cosmetic, you could resolve to grant permission subject to a further condition that notwithstanding the submitted elevation, further details and materials are submitted for approval as a discharge of condition, and that would allow some minor amendment to include perhaps more stone to soften the appearance, if that was absolutely critical to members' decision to approve or refuse. We would regard that as a fairly achievable matter through a matter of condition. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Councillor Edwards.
I'd like to recommend that we take that option and make that a condition if possible, please.
I think it's worth having a vote on that condition, purely and simply on the condition that Elizabeth Sims has just outlined. If you want us to say it again, I think Emma's got it all tidied away.
Apologies. It was a minor amendment to the recommendation that further conditions added on the materials to be submitted to the plan, and Elizabeth can expand on.
Include the expression notwithstanding the submitted elevational detail, that further details first be submitted to and approved in writing by the local planning authority in respect of elevational treatment and facing materials. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Edwards. Would you be proposing that additional? Do you have a seconder?
I'd like to propose that, please.
I will say.
Seconder. And those in favour of that recommendation?
The condition.
The condition amendment, yes. Thank you. That's unanimous. Members, if there's nothing else, let's move to the recommendations. Subject to the conditions 1 to 19 and informatives 1 to 12 on pages 31 to 40 of the report, plus the additional condition that we have just heard, that permission be granted. May I have those in favour of the recommendation to grant, please show.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Those against?
1.
Thank you. Therefore, permission is granted. Thank you all very much indeed.